Mary Ann Ragan was born on May 28, 1862, in Vienna, Missouri. She was the third of 4 children born to James and Elizabeth Tennyson Ragan. When Mary was born, her father was 32 and her mother was 26. Elizabeth was her father's second wife. He was married to Margaret Larrick, but she died in 1853 at the age of 23, sometime after giving birth to their son George. 1 year later, in 1854, after Margaret had passed away, James married Elizabeth. I'm not going to lie, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with Mary's mom, Elizabeth. When Mary was 2, her father passed away at the age of only 35. This left Elizabeth a widow with 4 children to raise. I found the 1870 census that would have been 5 years after James had passed away. Mary was 9 on this census. Her mother, Elizabeth, was 33. She still had the last name of Ragan, and she did list she was the head of household and did not have a husband living with her. She was living with her 5 children, William, John, Mary, Margaret, and 1-year-old Rosie in Maries County, Missouri. 3 years later, she had another daughter she named Verena Ragan. Now, obviously, James Ragan couldn't have been Rosie or Verena's father, as he had died 5 years before Rosie was born. According to Elizabeth's Find a Grave page, she remarried Gehazi or Hayes Ball and had 3 daughters with him, Harriet, Rosie, and Verena. Now, Hayes was 21 years older than Elizabeth, and I found him on the same 1870 census. At this time, he was 55, living in Howell County, Missouri, with his 6 children and no wife listed. Their first daughter, 4-year-old Harriet, was living with Hayes. Today, Maries County and Howell County are a 2-hour drive in a car, so if this is true, that was quite the long-distance relationship. Hayes's page also said he was the 4th cousin of George Washington. His mother birthed him out of wedlock. He had 14 children with his first wife, 3 with Elizabeth, and then went on to have 4 more with his next wife, which would have been a total of 21 children. How much of this is correct, I'm really not sure. But Elizabeth did have more children after James passed, and she did keep giving them the last name of Ragan because this was shown by the censuses. So anyways, back to Mary. On October 22nd, 1878, when Mary was 16, she married 20-year-old William Henderson. Together, they would have 10 children, 7 girls and 3 boys: Bertha, Robert, Grace, Mary, James, Minnie, Emma, Homer, Mildred, and Lila. William and Mary lived in Maries County, Missouri, where he worked as a farmer and she worked as a housewife. When Mary was 37 in the year 1900, the family had moved to Jackson Township in Ozark County, Missouri. William passed away 8 years later in 1908 at the age of only 50. I wasn't able to find any information on his cause of death. 2 years after William's death, on the 1910 census, Mary, who was widowed, was shown living with her mother, Elizabeth, and her 5 children, whose ages ranged from 19 to 4 years old. 10 years later, on the 1920 census, 57-year-old Mary is living with 51-year-old Charles James, and the couple state they are married. Mary passed away on December 18, 1936, at the age of 74. I found her obituary, and it stated she had died at her brother George Ragan's home from a sudden heart attack. It stated her son Homer Henderson was a barber in West Plains, and that her husband W.C. Henderson had passed away nearly 30 years ago. Even though she had remarried and William had been gone for 33 years, she was buried next to him. Her obituary also listed her last name as Henderson, not James, and made no mention of Charles, so the couple probably had split up before her death. Mary is buried at Henderson Cemetery in Douglas County, Missouri. The land the cemetery sits on was deeded to the county in 1926 by R.H. and Maggie Henderson and was named Henderson Cemetery at that time. R.H. was William and Mary's oldest son, Robert. William had been buried in the plot for 18 years when this happened, and he wasn't the first burial. A 4-year-old named Roland Holt in 1879 is the oldest marker. Mary is buried next to William and their daughter Grace. I also cleaned both of their headstones. William's has already been posted, and Grace's will be posted soon. At the top of her headstone is a Bible, which for that time period and this area indicates she was a Christian. The picture below the Bible shows heaven's gates opening, which symbolizes the afterlife and the deceased person's soul entering into heaven. At the top says, "Come ye blessed." I did find some photos of Mary. This first photo is of Mary and William with 7 of their 10 children. It was labeled left to right, standing in the back, Grace, Unknown, Mary, and Robert. William is holding Minnie, James is between them, and Mary is holding Emmy. My guess is the older girl is Bertha, since she was the only child older than Robert. Emma is the baby in this photo, so it would have been taken sometime after 1904 when she was born. Mary probably was around the age of 42 in this photo. This next photo is of Mary with 2 of her kids, and this is her mother, Elizabeth Tomlinson Ragan. Now, the photo didn't have the kids labeled or a date on it. Their last 2 children born were 2 girls named Mildred and Lila. It looks like those are both girls in the photo. It could possibly be them. And I thought this was neat. Notice how they hung a blanket up for a backdrop to take the pictures with. That was a common practice for back in this day. This last photo was taken of Mary in her later years. This one also wasn't labeled or dated, so I'm not sure of the year. Here are the before and after pictures of her stone. I did take the after shot 3 months after the first cleaning. It does still have some of that growth on it that needs to come off, so I'm just going to keep being patient and let the D2 do its thing. I'll probably go recheck it in the fall or winter. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please like and subscribe.